Okay, we're live. Already got a thumbs up. Okay. Welcome. I'm Mark, your host, coming to you from Baker's Green Acres. And today is Wednesday. Mike Finn is with us. How you doing, Mike? It's January the 9th. 10th? July. Sorry. The 9th or the... Yeah, see, I don't really know what day it is. But that's not what I'm getting paid to do here. I'm not getting paid to know what day it is. All right, for me, I am in the middle of my hay preparation. So I did make a few videos today, and I put them up on Facebook, the Mark Baker Facebook. And then Jill takes what she wants from them, and then she's going to have a video that is just hay production, And I try to show it from the point of view of somebody that doesn't really know about hay, doesn't know where hay comes from, and has never created hay or made hay, and wants to see if it would be for them. For myself, I was around it for years, watching other people do it, and I would help with some parts of it, like stacking hay. I got to help with that. I got to help with cutting hay one time. I got to drive a self-propelled swather, they call it. And so I got to do some of the things, but I never really was responsible for every step myself. And so that was different when I came here to Michigan. It was way different from what I was used to in Montana. And so I had to learn a bunch of things. And when you're here in a farming community like this, everybody's busy, so there's not like people you can ask. And when I got into farming here in Michigan, it was a strange time. The Michigan farm was starting to crumble. It was starting to get squeezed pretty hard. Price of milk was going down, and people were having a tough time. So it wasn't like real good times. So here's some guy coming into the community, and he wants to be a farmer, and the lifelong farmers around here are like, yeah, right. So I had to do a lot of learning on my own. I learned a lot about equipment. The first equipment I bought was stuff that was sitting alongside the road, and paid $1,100 for the whole shebang. A hay bine, a baler, and a rake. And then I had my own little tractor. That ended in a huge mess. And it was kind of funny because the baler that I got was a New Holland baler. And it had pipes and chains. It was a round baler. You never see them anymore, or I never do. And the whole thing piled up. It all got tangled up, and it was a mess. So I called up the New Holland dealership, and I was like, hey, do you got a service guy that can come out and help me? And they were kind of like, yeah, right. So, I don't know, that was my indoctrination in the hay cutting. The first year was pretty tough. The second year, I borrowed and bought a bunch of equipment. And that was a mess too, because then I had a payment on this equipment that was way more than what I was taking off the property. So I figured that I would have paid that off in 2025, and that wouldn't be too good. I could have bought the hay that I was making for the payment that I was making on the equipment. But in 2025, I'd be paid off, so that wasn't very good. And it was pretty sophisticated stuff. And I cut 50 acres here, something like that, 40, 50 acres. So I wound up going a different route, and I've got equipment now that is 1960s vintage, so it's kind of old, but it's not ancient. It only gets used once or twice a year, so it just doesn't get a lot of use. It's kind of like a boat motor. And I've got a pretty good thing going. I know how to take care of this equipment because I've used it now for about 10 years. So I've got a good thing going now. And we've got all of our hay cut. It's laying on the ground. I may get a little rain tonight, but it doesn't look like it's going to come to us. And then we're supposed to have clear sailing for 7 days. So I'm in good shape. I just came in because I was baling. I was on my 8th bale, and one of the belts broke. So it happens. You know, there's a lace that goes together like this, a lacing, and then there's a wire that goes down through it. So when they let go, it's usually after you've used them for several years, and then you just have to reaccomplish the lacing again. So I got half of it done before I had to come up here and sit down and talk to y'all. So I'm in good shape. I'll hit the ground running at 9 o'clock tonight when we finish, and I will have the baler ready to go, and then we'll get on it first thing in the morning, and we'll be in good shape. So there was something looming out there that I wanted to talk about. Last week we had my youngest son's 8th birthday, and he wanted to go see the monster truck rally. And my second time going to the monster truck rally. I thought that I would only ever go one time in my life, but now I've gone twice in my life. But I doubt very seriously I'll go a third time unless my grandson wants to go. Very exciting, very exciting. I kept waiting for the part where they were going to crash, catch fire, and explode, but it never happened. It was actually kind of boring. So things around here have been going pretty good. My grow area is in full production. I've got my center section on the grow area. I've got 3 areas there. If you haven't seen the videos on it, go back and check it out. For the homesteader, it's really a good deal. It's really a good deal. And I've got about 12 pigs, and I'm just rotating them through these different grow areas. I've got 100 by 100 in field peas now that I'm getting ready to let them go into. They were on forage radishes, I'm sorry. And the radishes I planted them too close, so they got no bigger than about that around and about that long. And so then they bolted, they flowered, and they were going to seed. So I knew they weren't going to go too far, so I let the pigs on them. And I made a prediction of 2 or 3 weeks. They're still on it, so I'm over 2 weeks, but they're not digging into the radishes. And I pulled one out, and I ate it, and I wouldn't be digging into it either. They're horribly hot. So I'm just gonna let it go, and I'll plow that up and replant that, and there'll be 2-3 weeks where they're at, where they're gonna go, and then I'll move them over to the next one, and by the time they get done with that, it should be about 6 weeks down the road, and I should be able to put them back on number 1. Let's see what else is going on around here. We have the pool up and running. Great addition to a farmstead. So I'm out there cutting hay, and before I come on with you, I jumped in the pool. So I'm as cool as a cucumber right now, sitting in a little breezeway here, loving life. Jill's here with me, so she's reading the questions. Something else that's been going on. This is what I wanted to talk about. I'm not sure how this happened. I think it was might have been conversation. Maybe Jill, you want to chime in on this, but we started to realize, or Jill started to realize, I've always felt that the plants that grow so fervently around us that we call weeds, something told me that we should be utilizing them, this pig field, here's a pen. If we don't plant that, and I just go through it with a plow and rough up the soil, it'll be totally weeds in 2 weeks. And the type of weeds that grow here, we know about lamb's quarter, we know about purslane, we know about plantain, or is it plantain? Plantain. We know about pigweed, but we really didn't know what they were good for. Jill got a book, and she's been reading it, and we've been having discussions, and then she's been doing research online. Well, I think about every day last week and this week at lunch and dinner, there's this wild salad on the table, and it usually has like some onions in it. It usually has some, you know, it's just all this green. It's really dark green. Looks like it could be spinach. And I don't say anything. I don't say, hey, what's in this? Because I don't want the kids to be like, oh, I'm not going to eat weeds. So we just dig into it. And I think I would turn my nose up at a lettuce salad right now, to be honest with you. I mean, it's just very substantial greens. You know, it's not light. It's pretty heavy stuff, and vinegar and oil on it, and honey from right around here. So we've kind of stumbled on that, and Jill has been making gains every day. She's been doing videos here and there, and you can find them. Where can they find them?
Um, they're on my Facebook page, but they're public, so they can be seen.
They're on Jill Baker's Facebook page, so you can see them there. But at some point, you'll swing them around to you'll put them on the YouTube channel, won't you? Okay, at some point. But we're real excited about this because it's so, there's so many of them here, you know. And the thing that Jill did today was, what was it that you did? I remember you took a whole bunch of something. What were they?
I had
Purslane.
Yeah.
Purslane. Purslane, if you've ever seen purslane.
Purslane and mallow.
Purslane and mallow. Purslane's a weed that grows in the garden, chokes your garden right out if you're not careful. And it's a succulent. My boys love that. Can you rouse these dogs out of here?
I'll close the door.
Yeah. And let's see. And then she strained it, and those dogs are panting something terrible, and it's distracting. And then she strained it, put it in water, put some of it in water, chilled it right down, and then probably put some honey in it. And I was out there sweating my I'm sweating really hard, you know, working. And one of the kids brought out a jar that had this cold green potion in it. And I didn't even ask what it was. I just gushed, you know, I just downed it. And it was so good. It was weed juice, purslane juice. And then I came up here, I had had a break, and well, the hay was too brittle, so I knew I had to wait a little while. So I came up here, sat down, and it just, I felt really good. You know, if you drink like a pop or something like that, and you just slam a pop, feels good for a minute, but then it doesn't feel so good. You know, you feel like you drank too much or something, and then it really bogs you down later. This did not bog me down at all. So we're kind of wondering if the reason these plants don't grow so fervently, you know, you're weeding your garden, and you have a tendency to want to curse the maker of those plants. But maybe they're there for a reason. I don't know. So we're looking at that. These salads are unbelievable. I just slammed a bowl of salad right before I sat down, and I'm gonna get back to it after I'm done. So we're eating off of our environment, and that's really exciting to do. Another thing that they've been doing is they're making pesto. Pesto is some incredible stuff. You can start with, let's say, parsley. And you take a bunch of parsley, you put it in the blender, and you blend it until there's nothing, you know, it's just mush. And then they put in oil, and then they might put in some walnuts, and they might put in some garlic, and then it makes this paste. They should call it pesto. And if you have bratwurst or something like that, instead of using mustard, because the commercial mustard that we got is full of all kinds of garbage. You just put some of this stuff on it, and it is unbelievable. Unbelievable. Rachel made some out of lamb's quarter. This farm is covered with lamb's quarter. Covered with it. And it is the best stuff. It is the best stuff. So that's real exciting too. And they're making it out of dandelion greens. And now every one of these things, every one of these weeds, if you look in this book, other cultures have used these weeds for health reasons, and they've gotten really good results with them. But, you know, of course, in the United States, we that's for ponytail wearers and tree huggers. You know, you want something from Pfizer. That's what you want. If you want good health, you want Centrum Silver. That's what you want. So I don't think that's true. I think everything is right here. It's just not advertised, you know, because nobody can make money off of the purslane that's growing out in the garden. That we usually weed it and throw it to the pig. That's another thing. When we go through and we weed the garden, we have a weed-a-thon. We call it weed and feed. And today, there was 3 of them weeding in the garden, two of my kids and Jill, and they filled the bucket of the front end loader. And it wasn't even, you know, that they could have filled it probably 4 times. Weeding is just something, it's just a way of life, you know. And we're doing pretty good with mulching and stuff, so you know, I'm not complaining at all, but I dumped that to the pigs and they destroyed it. Now, why do we have such exceptional health with our animals that are, you know, grazing off weeds constantly? Why is that? I don't know. I'm just asking kind of a rhetorical question because I really think, I really think that we're wearing the ruby slippers and we don't even know it. You know, we're weeding it and throwing it away on the compost pile, and then we go in the house and have macaroni and cheese. I think we're really missing the point here. Anyway, there's my rant. Looks like we have 9,000 people, 8,000 people listening. So I will take your first question. All
right. Paul.
Hey, Paul, how you doing?
Setting up pig huts. He is wondering about putting floors in the huts. He doesn't want rooting in the floor and water collecting in them. It's going to be for sows and babies.
You don't want rooting in the floors, huh? Well, I use huts that I got from, let's see, Farm Tech. And they're calf hutches is what they call them. I think you can probably see them. Well, I can show you one right now. Right out there. You see that white thing out there? That's one of them. I think that's a 5x7. I'm pretty sure that's the dimensions. You can look in Farm Tech. And they have no floors in them. I think maybe you're thinking grazing pigs is like grazing cows. It isn't. Pigs dig, and that's what they're supposed to do. Like my fields, if you watch my videos, I want my pigs to dig those fields. So I'm planting purposely root crops so they will get down under those roots and dig them out. And my porta huts, well, we call them porta huts, but porta hut is actually a brand name, and I'm not even sure if they're still in business. But if they are, 15 years ago, I had a pamphlet from them that I got from somebody else, and it might have been 20 years old then. I don't know, and I never really checked into it because we found these, and they were inexpensive, and they were good. They last a long time. They were over 10 or 15 years. They're over 15 years now, or they're 15 years now. Some are a little bit less, but and they've stood up and they've got a lot of use. But these are movable. I have hooks on both sides, so I can go out there with a front end loader and I can pick them up and move them. And that's real important because pigs are going to dig. They're just going to dig. When they want to make a nest for their babies, they're going to go around and dig it all out, and then they're going to grab straw and they'll take it in there and they'll build a nest. So you don't want floors in them because then you're going to wind up having to get in there and scrape stuff out, and you'll get moisture in there and it will rot the floor unless you're going to mill the floor out of steel, and then it will rust. Floors are just a bad idea. Because if you can move it, you move it to a fresh spot, then there's no manure on that spot. It's clean. It's a fresh, clean place for the mom to have her babies in there. And don't be surprised if in the summertime they'll just flop down and have them. They don't need the hut. We've even had pigs that have flopped down in the wintertime and had them in the snow. They didn't want to use the hut. And sometimes they handle it. Sometimes they don't do so good. I think danger is in the fall when it's cold, when they farrow outside, and then they get a rain on the babies, and then maybe it's a little windy. That's when you can have some problems. And in that case, with no floor on the hut, we can pick it up and just put it down over her and her babies to keep them dry. Whereas if you have a floor, it's pretty tough to get a brand new, a sow who's got brand new babies to go in to the hut. I mean, in your mind, you might think it's easy to do, and people may have told you great ways to move pigs. I've heard them all. I think it's better if you set things up in the field that you've got sows in. You set it up, you put a round bale out there or several square bales, and then you just let them do the work. If you are raising Mangalitses or Mangalitsa crosses, they're good moms. They do stuff on their own. I don't build their nests for them. I do very little for them. And if they're not good moms, they go into the freezer as sausage. So they make good sausage patties. But the good moms, we'll hold them over for years and years. And, so I don't think you want to put floors in it. But if you do and it works out, let me know, because I've never done it. I don't see the point. I think people might think that if she digs it out, then the little babies will roll down under her, but that's what bedding is all about. And in the wintertime, deep straw bedding is your friend. It is really your friend.
He was concerned about water in the huts. So
Yeah, water in the huts, I could see where that would be a concern too, but if you can move them, then if it is dished out and there is water in there and you see it's full of water, move it to someplace where there is no water. And then, you can do some work for her. You can fill it up with bedding, and it will give her the idea that that's what's supposed to happen. But even brand new sows, they figure it out. So how's that? I hope I answered well. You have another question?
Okay. Sean wondered, would you recommend any kind of different feed for a sow that just had a litter? It's her first one.
By the way, weed juice. It's Jill's. I'm just stealing a swig. Weed juice. I got a cat here that's playing with this cord. A kitten. He's gonna probably pull that off. Okay, different feed for sows, huh? Well, I think if you were to get a hold of a university book that is going to talk about, confinement, they would say, oh, for sure, a sow is going to need much more feed because she's going to be producing milk, and you've got to make sure that she has more. If you're doing a pastured operation, I think you always have more feed out there than they need. There's always more feed out there because there's all the Like if you were to look at my pigs right now, actually I'll turn it around and show you. I don't know how well it shows up. They're right behind that tree that's directly in front of me, and there's about 12 pigs out there. And you can see there's a lot of green right where they are, so they're picking through all that feed that we grew. And then to the left, that's peas. Those are field peas, and they're thick. All right. So how do I turn this around? Okay, there you go. So in a pastured scenario, there's always going to be more for her available. I mean, these pigs are filling themselves up all the time off of the stuff that we grow, and then we'll always put in more feed than they need. I mean, if we want them to get big. So I think your sows should have more available to them of whatever you're feeding them. The nice thing about the heritage breeds, at least the Mangalitsa and the Mangalitsa Cross, I don't know about all of them, but I'm told from other people it's kind of the same, is they can do very well on hay. They can do very well on forage. Heck, you can, if you trim maple trees, you throw the branches to them, they will take every piece of bark off of those maple branches, and they'll do well on it.
They are
Weed and
Mangalitsa's
feed.
and on pasture. So.
Yeah, they're designed. Well, they're more like the pigs that would have been like Noah's pig. The original design. White pigs like Yorkshires and the Yorkshire crosses that they use in confinement. They're highly hybridized, and they are hybridized for a couple of things. Feed conversion is one. They don't want fat anymore. They don't want fat on the pigs because America doesn't like fat anymore because we're too fat, so we shouldn't eat fat, right? And they're long, so they get a few more pork chops out of them. So, so they make a little bit more money off them. But that's not what we're doing in homesteading. In homesteading, we want our pigs provide us with several things. They provide us with good quality fat that comes from good quality forage. They provide us with good quality red meat that comes from good quality forage. But you have to have pigs that will eat that stuff and can process it. Some of the just regular farm pigs, they can't, and they won't. They just won't. They'll turn their nose up on it. There's very little that the Mangalitsa won't eat. So they didn't get any bread today, and now I see that they're out there digging around a little bit. So maybe they'll dig up some of those radishes and find out, hey, Tony, these are good. Maybe. I don't know. I'm kind of watching them right now to see what they're doing. But if you're doing regular pigs and you're doing it in confinement, of course your sows are going to need more because they're producing more. The rule of thumb with a sow is about 5 pounds a day of feed, and that would be a prepared feed, which would be a hog chow feed. But we've wandered off the reservation a long time ago, so we feed things like pumpkins and apples and junk bread, and when we process chickens, the pigs actually get the heads, the necks, the feet, the guts. They actually get that. It's fresh chicken. Believe it? And they love it. And when I first started doing it, I thought, wow, I don't know. But when you think about it, a pig in its natural state, if they were Noah's pig, even wild pigs around, there's none in Michigan. But let's say you go down to Florida or Texas, and somebody runs over a deer on the road, the pigs will be out there eating on it. That's just what they do. They're cleaner uppers. And so, yeah, feeding it's a deep subject. It's a deep subject. But that's what I think about that. Just make sure they have more. Just make sure there's more out there for them if you're pasturing. That was, who was that?
Sean?
That was Sean. Okay, I think you are pasturing, so, all right.
Um, this was a question we had from earlier this week. How old are your pigs when you wean, and can they just go into a pen on feed, or do they still need something?
Yeah, weaning
Special.
pigs. I had a question this week about that, and I actually had a question today from a guy. With the manga and the manga crosses and a lot of the heritage breeds, if you're going to farrow once a year, which is if you're homesteading, maybe that's all you want to do. You can farrow almost 3 times a year, almost, but it's 114 days, so that doesn't quite fit into 365 for twice. But so you'll have a little bit of an overlap. But you could do 3 times. But when you're doing pastured, the animals kind of get in a more natural rhythm, and they seem to like to farrow in the winter and then in the spring. That's what they hit. I mean, I'd love to, you know, I'd love to tell you that they would farrow in the spring and in the fall, but that's not always how it works. You can force that by taking your boar away. Let's see, what was the question? Oh,
How old are the pigs
oh
when you
okay. So if you're only going to farrow once a year, a good way to get some really nice babies is, even if you're going to do it twice a year, is that you'll read in the university books, well, the babies need to be on mom for 6 weeks. Well, that's for expediency purposes. They'll take them away at 6 weeks, and then they'll inseminate the sow, so they can get more out of her, and then they'll put the babies on soy or something like that. But in the homesteading model, what do you care if the babies are on there 10 weeks? Or what do you care if they're on there until the mother kicks them off and will not let them nurse anymore? That's the normal cycle. That's the natural cycle. That's how it would work in the wild. And you'll get some nice big chunky babies, and they will be very healthy, and they'll really go. So let's say you have 1 or 2 sows. Let's say you just have one and one boar. And you've only got one sow to take care of. You can walk the feed to her. It will really only be a little bit more than you're normally giving her. She'll turn it into milk, and she'll feed it to her babies. And then when the babies start taking feed, then they'll really get going, and you'll have some nice big fat babies. In livestock, as in people too, I see this in people too. You want them to be utilized for what they were designed for. So, in the wild, every time that sow is open, she's going to get impregnated. It seems like when man steps in, man says, "Oh no, we only want to do this twice a year because we want to leave her time to rest," right? And man thinks those things up, and they think they're pretty good, and they put them in textbooks. But in the wild, that doesn't happen. I have seen women who have had 8 children, and they are more magnificent after having 8 children than they were before they even had one. So they reached their potential, they discovered their potential. And then it seems like they're good and broke in. I'm getting myself in trouble here, but it seems like that's what they were designed to do. So if they go through that, then the aftermath, when they're done having offspring, it's like they've reached their full potential. I'm not sure if I'm. It's sort of like a car that has like 250,000 miles on it, and you take the engine apart and it's flawless. It's the oil has been changed and all that stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting myself in deep with this, But I think that the way we have done it has worked really well for us. My sows have always been very healthy. We've had very good luck until this last spring with our sows. We had, I don't know, we had problems with them. We just had sows that did not get inseminated, and I don't know why. I don't know what the problem was, but I wasn't the only one. Uh, there's two other guys I know that had problems too. So there's been a lot of things kind of weird happening in nature about this time. I think the North Pole switched to the South Pole, and I think Saturn is really where the moon is, and all kinds of things. The Earth is flat. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what's going on, but there's been some shifting in nature. So we see with the water level rising, all the rain that we've had. Here our sun has been blocked out because of forest fires up in Canada. So things aren't always the same. Things change. And of course we get global warming happening, and then we have global cooling, and we have all kinds of things happening. So we just can't expect things to be the same all the time. Things do shift. They do change. We try to kind of go in the middle of the graph and say, well, it kind of usually works this way, but it didn't this year, but it doesn't mean the end of the world. So we can change, we can get some different sows. That's what I did. I've got some different sows now that they're part of my herd. They just were going to be feeders, and then the sows that I had, I needed to send some animals to the butcher anyway, and we just wanted to clear that pen out, so we just cleared them out. So, yeah. Yes. Okay. So you can take the babies off at 6 weeks, or you can leave them on until the mom kicks them off. Whatever you want to do. I kind of recommend leaving them on, and then when she kicks them off, she'll get inseminated again, and then you start over again. I leave the boar right in with my herd, and it's what we call a sounder, right? A sounder. And it doesn't really work in the commercial breeding model because we want as many pigs as we can possibly get for the animals that we have because we're converting all of it to dollars. But in the homestead model, what my pigs are providing, I was going to say this, what they're providing for me is an accumulation point of calories. So we have a big walk-in freezer here, and when it's on, that little meter is going like this. When it's off, that meter is going real slow. And that's what I like, because that's like a slow drip of dollars that I have to send to some company. I don't like that. Now, when fall comes and it's cold outside, that meter will still be going slow like this. But those pigs are still here, but they're out there. And if we're feeding them off pasture, it's not costing us an arm and a leg to feed them. Pigs are expensive to feed, as I'm sure a lot of you have found out. If you can get a feed source for very little or nothing and then supplement it with pasture, you're in good shape. You're in good shape. My pigs are very healthy, very happy, and love to wallow in the mud. Think I answered that question?
That one and another one, yes.
Okay. What was the other one?
Do you run your boar with your sows?
Yeah, I do run my boar with the sows. Yeah, it's just worked out good, It's just worked out good, so we keep it going. Anything else?
Yeah. Blessed Acres, Pyrenees dogs. She had an update. Where'd it go? They're having a GPS fence installed for their 48 acres. Both dogs will get professional training on it, staying inside the limits, so they're on their way forward with that. But she had a question, how can I keep my Pyrenees cool in this extreme heat? She's been brushing out his summer coat, hosing him down, giving him ice water, providing shade.
All those things. Remember, though, that they're animals, and they're designed to adapt to the environment way better than we are, you know. And their hair is different than you think. It does a couple things. It cools them and it warms them. So whatever you do, don't think that giving your dog a haircut will help keep him cool, because it won't. Just let him go swimming, let him have water, and let him have a cool place to lay down. And our dogs have places on the farm where they go to stay cool. They lay in the back room here on the concrete, and that floor is always cool. And that's why the door was shut, just because they're in there panting, and it was giving me a distraction. So a GPS fence, okay. I don't know anything about those more than I guess they look at your property from a satellite, and then they design a pulse that will activate your animal's collar if they get close to it. And I remember these people wanted their dogs or dog to be able to go far to the back of their property. And what I did was I have great Pyrenees guardian dogs, and I wouldn't be without them. I highly recommend them. This is Mary, right?
Blessed Acres. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's Mary. I talked to her on the phone. She bought one from us. And they're doing poultry, and they're having a heck of a time because the dogs were, or the dog they got from us was killing chickens. And the husband wasn't home enough to really get the dog trained away from that. And so it was not working out the way they thought it would work, if I remember the story properly. But what I do is I just have a pet safe fence. So we just put a wire around the area that we don't want the dogs to go on the other side of. And some of it we just tucked it into at the root of the fence. We didn't even ditch it in. Some places we ditched it in, but only ditched it in about this far. All we did was we went along with a shovel and split it and just tucked it in with our hands, and then just tamped it down. So it was pretty easy to install. And then when the dogs, they have a collar on that has a little unit on the side with a 9-volt battery, and if they get close to that wire, they get a tone first. If they go closer, the thing will vibrate, and if they keep going, they'll get a pretty wonderful shock right there in the neck, and it's pretty rough on them. So they learn fast. Pyrenees are smart though, and they'll know, hey, if I'm not getting a tone, I'm not going to get a vibration, I guess I'm not going to get a shock. They figure it out. So if I was to design one of those things, it would be you go from nothing to 1,000,000-volt shock. So they never know. It's like an electric fence. They're not going to know that there's no electricity in that fence unless they get a shock. So they have a lot less tendency to test it than the way that they design these things. And I know they're trying to be humane, but sometimes we sacrifice effectiveness for humaneness. And when you sacrifice that effectiveness, then you're really inhumane, because a dog going out in the street is inhumane and it's dangerous. So I don't necessarily agree with them, but they have to be, they don't want PETA coming after them. So there you go. That's my 2 cents.
All right.
Another
I've got
question?
2 big ones here for you. I'm going to give you Joe's question first and save JD's for after that.
Okay.
Joe's question: how do you recommend to balance work and growing the homestead? He's feeling a little overwhelmed lately.
Is Joe a man or a woman?
Joe Brown.
Joe Brown. Oh. So you're overwhelmed, are you, Joe? Well, maybe you should take it easy. get out, shut up. Just do it. Just do it. Quit your whining. Quit your whining. Quit your complaining. And just get out there and do it. And I don't want to hear any more nonsense from you. I'm going to kick you in the rear end. Joe's a friend of mine, plus he's Army. And Army people respond to, get out there and do it! They respond to that.
You hurt his feelings.
Oh, did I hurt your feelings, Joe? I'm sorry. You know, it's sort of like my wife having 7 children and reaching her potential. You want to be a homesteader and you want to work a full-time job. I did that for the last 8 years of my military career. I had a homestead. So I did both. And it got me to a place now where if I'm not working a 12-hour shift here at this place, I feel like I haven't even done anything, you know. So, you smell that? So, that didn't smell too good. So, if you're getting overwhelmed, you have to learn. That's a challenge that you have to overcome. So, you have to adapt to that feeling of overwhelmedness. Put it behind you first and continue to do what you have to do. I need to talk to you, by the way. I need to know how your processing shop's coming along. And I think the smart thing to do for you is to say, okay, well, I got this farmstead. I got this job that I got to work. I got these little kids. And cut time out of one of the other two and say, I'm just going to spend it with these kids. Do that. Don't miss out on that. Because your farmstead someday is just going to be overgrown. You know, there won't be anybody there. You'll be buried up on the knoll, and it'll just go back to haywood and stubble, and it will be nothing. You're doing it for the enjoyment and the feeling of self-sufficiency, and you're doing that for your wife and children. But don't do it at their expense, right? So I guess what I'm saying is, you know, you think that you're going to have this, and this done this season. Be realistic and say, well, if I get this and this done, maybe that'll be good enough, and then spend time with my wife and kids. So for you, and a lot of yous out there, I think you're not likely to come across somebody of my good nature, right? Every day of the week. So get with somebody and say, help me to prioritize what I need here. So for you, Joe's putting in a poultry processing facility, and I recommended that. I was out at Joe's house. I highly recommended it because he said he would like to do it. If you can get that up and running, you can make enough money processing poultry for the people in your neighborhood. And your neighborhood could be quite large, you know, if you're willing to kill chickens for people and do a good quality job. And you do it for $4.50 or $5 a bird. No joke. You can make good money, and you should probably be able to make as much money as you make pouring concrete. And that way, you can put all your time into your farmstead. So you can have your little business right there, your poultry business. And then when that's done for the day, then you can do other farmstead stuff. You know, so priority would be, for you would be, get that thing done. But you really need to learn how to do that whole process. I mean, you know how to gut a chicken, you know how to scald a chicken and all that stuff. But is it to the point where it's like you've run that patrol a million times and you know how to do it? You know you're not going to have a problem. You know you're not going to lose any equipment or anybody. You know, it has to be done a lot of times, and that means several seasons. And you have to learn how to deal with the public. So, you know, don't think that you've got to get this down pat. We've been doing it here for 15 years. And I'd say the last 6 years have been a breeze. But I remember very well. I even remember the guy that we were doing chickens for. We had to do 100 chickens, and I remember just I couldn't sleep the night before because I was thinking, can we do that many in a day? We had our plucker, we had our scalder, different ones than we have now, and we were kind of set up. And this guy was a big time farmer in the neighborhood. Everybody knew him, and we were going to do this job for him. And I thought, gee, that's a $400 job. Well, at the time we were probably charging $250 a bird. Yeah,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, probably. Now we get $4 a bird. So if we do 200 birds on a Friday, a custom day, do the math on that. That's good money. I mean, it's a day's work, but it's good money. And with a decent crew of well-trained people, and that's my wife, me, and my kids, and now it's all my little kids, we can do that. We can do 200 birds, and we can have them done before lunch, in the cooling water, and then after lunch it's packing them up, bagging them, tagging them, and putting them in the cooler. We can do that, and so it's a nice little business to have. So I would say it's like eating an elephant. Every day when you get home from work, take a bite out of it, but don't work until 2 in the morning and then have no sleep, and then the next day you come home and you yell at your wife and kick your dog. Don't do that. How's that?
All right. Good answer. I'm still holding on to JD's question. Paul, this is a quicker one. What are your thoughts on feeding your butcher pigs in a trailer in order to load them? Do you think that's a good way to do it? I did it with my last batch and are doing it with this batch.
Well, if you're going to do it again, it must have worked. So if it works for you, do it. Yeah, I think that's fine.
Yeah, we do that regularly. Put the feed up in the trailer so that they're
and then push them up in.
motivated to practice jumping up in.
Yeah.
Get used to it.
The problem with having a trailer in with your pigs is they're wreckers. They'll pull the lights off. If they can get some wires, they'll rip them off, and then you're on the way to the butcher's and you get pulled over by a state trooper. And he thinks that you're insinuating that he's a pig, and you wind up getting hauled off to jail. So that's the problem there. But there's a couple other ways to do it. There's a couple videos out there that show how I do it. We call them loaders, and they're 12 by 12 enclosures that we make with 6 by 6 posts and 2 by 8. Yeah, 2 by 8s. We make a little corral, and then we feed them in there, and we'll feed them in there for a week, and then when they all go in there and they're distracted with their food, we'll just swing the door shut, and then we got them. And then there's a hatchway there that will match up with my trailer, and so I can just back up to it, and they really have no place to go. We can force them into the trailer, and we've not had one that we couldn't force in. There's another thing that I'm working on that you might want to consider. Like my trailer, there's a gate that slides up, and it's my pig trailer, and it's only 24 inches wide. It's like we call it the guillotine. And there's a pulley on it. You can pull a rope, and it will actually pull it up, and then let it go, and it'll slam down like a guillotine. And the last time we had to load pigs was off of a field that did not have a loader. And I've been meaning to put one out there, and I will, but I just didn't have one at the time. So what we did was we drove a T-post right at the corner of the trailer. Maybe I could draw this. Piece of paper. All right. I'll try to do this the best I can. This is not like optimum. But yeah. All right, so the trailer's like this, and here's the door right there. So I drove a post right there, T-post, and then I drove another T-post out here, and we put a gate in here. So it was about a 14-foot gate. And then I drove another post right here and put another gate here, like this. Another identical gate, 14-footer. And I could swing it all the way out to here if I wanted to. So I just used baling, I used wire, just that I use smooth wire, we call it. It's like barbed wire, but no barbs on it. And I lashed it on with wire at the top and on the bottom, so this would swing. All right. So then when we kind of chased the pig around a little bit, and when we got the nose pointing this direction, as soon as the nose was pointing that direction, then you just take this gate and swing it over, and you could pull it over like this. You had a great amount of, you could pull it over in this direction, and you'd have a good amount of leverage because it was so long. And it would wind up squeezing the pig like this. And so the pig would be stuck right in here. That makes sense? So then all you'd have to do is slap her a little bit, or poke her with something, and she'd say, I think I'll go in this trailer. And then she'd go in. And then in this trailer, we actually have a gate here too. And it hinges right here. So we'll swing it. Well, that's not where it is, because it will swing all the way this way. And then once a pig is in, we'll close that gate. So then they're up in here. And we can fit 6 or 8 of them in there. It's a pretty good sized trailer. But if I was to put this trailer in with them, they would destroy it. It's down low. And that might be a problem that you're having, because a lot of trailers are up kind of high and pigs can't step into them. But we made this one for pigs. I've hauled a lot of pigs with this one. And I've hauled them many, many thousands of miles. I've gone a long ways with this trailer. Winter, summer, it's all weather. It's good trailer. 3,500 pound axle I put under it. But if you're doing it that way and it's working, do it. Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
It's just that, you got to plan ahead. And yeah, but if you can plan ahead, that's great.
Okay. What would you say is the most difficult task to perform on a homestead? This is from Cadet of Space.
I wonder if this person actually watches my videos. Does it say?
No.
Because, a lot of times when I'm making a video about, like I made videos about cutting hay. And at the time I made the video, I said, you know what, this is one of my favorite things to do on this farm. But then I'll be plowing snow, and I'll be saying, I love plowing snow. Or I'll be mowing my lawn. I got a nice 0-turn lawnmower. I love mowing my lawn. So, things that I don't like to do. I like weeding.
What's the most difficult task?
Difficult.
What you told Joe. Getting things lined up in order of correct
Yeah.
priority.
Prioritizing is difficult for me because, sometimes there's things that are looming that I need to have done. Like there's a window in the house that was broken in December. Kids were horsing around at dinner time, and one of them elbow went through. So, we cut a piece of insulation, board insulation, and put that in there and did a nice job of putting duct tape around it and everything. But it's green, and on the inside it's silver, and it's not glass. And that really needs to get changed. And, I would have to take a measurement of it, and then, but we're planning on changing those windows, so I'm putting it off until I do the landscaping in front of it, just in case I break one of the windows. So that's probably it, is prioritizing and doing the things that I don't want to do. Oh, I know. When the washing machine breaks or the dryer, I hate that. I hate those jobs. I hate pulling them things out. I just soon buy a new one every time it happens. Pull it out, and you find things behind there and dusty and yuck. I don't like doing that. And they don't move out good, you know. Why don't they make them with wheels on them so they just slide out so the repairman can do it? And I really hate calling repairmen. I absolutely hate calling repairmen. And every time I do it, it's kind of like they show up to tell me what I should do to fix this. That's just, I don't like that. I'm calling a repairman because I have other things to do, and my forte is not fixing air conditioning equipment, so I'm calling you. And then they say, well, what you need to do is, I thought that's why I called you, but. So yeah, prioritizing, that's the hardest thing for me. I think it would probably be better if I wasn't the head cook and bottle washer here, and Jill just said at breakfast, she just handed me a job card and said, this is what you're doing today. It'd be easy, you know. What time is lunch? Okay. But that's not how it works. I have to do all the prioritizing and that. So yeah. Prioritizing. Thanks a lot.
I just know that you've talked about it a lot,
Yeah.
and it's been a hard, long lesson.
Yeah.
JD has been hearing about the low level of crops planted. He remembered that it happened back in the. I know that's why I saved this one. Remembered that it happened back in the 90s under Clinton, but the internet seems to be making an end of the world thing out of it.
Yeah. And I happen to know JD's friends with Kaz Attack, and Kaz is a big prepper. And me and Kaz had a little chat about that when he was up here not too long ago. Here's what I know, or here's what I've heard, and this is the best thing that I've heard. When I was a little kid, I remember we were heading into another ice age. I knew it. They scared the heck out of us. It was on 60 Minutes and everything. Oh, food shortages, everything. And then I came out of my fog of after high school and a little bit of college and stuff. Came out of that fog, and before I knew it, they were saying that the Earth's warming up. It's global warming, you know. And Al Gore was telling us that 2010, that the polar ice caps, they're going to be gone, completely gone, and we were going to have beachfront property right here in Michigan. I didn't believe what they were saying at that time. I just didn't. It just didn't sound legit to me. It didn't line up with what I was seeing. But if you have your ear to the ground and you're looking for truth, you're not just tuning in NBC and whatever they tell you on there is what you're going to go with, and you're the first one in line to repeat what they say. But if you're looking for truth and you're questioning, that doesn't sound right, that doesn't sound like how it really works, I would recommend that you look into grand solar minimum. And briefly, solar minimums are events that occur in this world that we live. You know, the sun's out there, we're here, and solar minimum events occur. And the sun is what controls the climate. It controls everything. Rainfall, snowfall, everything is all controlled by the sun. You know, the duration and all of that stuff. And a grand solar minimum is when you have a bunch of them line up. And if you look back in history at previous grand solar minimums, we don't go back that far as a country. So we, you know, the Noah didn't exist 500 years ago. It didn't exist 50 years ago. It just started existing. And right now they're saying that oh, the planet isn't the way it was, and so there's a problem. It's always changing. But grand solar minimums, I believe, are reality. And when you look into it, some of the sites that I listen to, they have it pretty well lined out that we are going to be looking at cooler temperatures and longer winters. And that's what I'm seeing. I saw a much longer winter last year, and we we're just getting into summer now, and it's July, and we've had a ton of rain. So yeah, they're making it look like the end of the world. Well, if 50% of our fields have not been planted, and I've heard it all over the board. I don't know what the percentage is that haven't been planted. I know where I live here, there's still fields that are not planted. And the fields that are planted, some of them are this high in corn. And corn, if you haven't noticed, is in everything, including your gas tank. So the real problem is corn that's used for feed. All right, now we're preaching pasture, right? We're preaching grass fed. Grass grew fine this year. Grew fine. Cutting hay, no problem. Didn't cut it when I wanted to. I cut it a little later, but I was able to adapt and adjust. I couldn't go by the calendar to cut it. Now I have 7 days ahead of me of clear weather, no rain. Right? I didn't have to plant the grass. I don't necessarily have to harvest the grass. My animals can harvest the grass. So if I had to bet on it right now, I would bet that grand solar minimums are a reality. You look in history, in the early part of the development of this country, when we had in New England, where they had no growing seasons, 0 growing seasons, a couple of them in a row, and it was a pretty tough situation. In the United States, we grow what we need for the following year. We don't have like a storeroom in back where you can just go and bring out truckloads of feed for your cattle or anything else. And what has happened, remember when we were kids and we would learn about farming in school, you'd hear them talking about crop rotation. Well, they don't really do that. Everything's put in corn or soybeans, right? I mean, the majority. And that's where they make their money. And the soil is really garbage now because they've just wore it out with petrochemical fertilizer. So if they put it in grass, it might be a while before they can get it going. I don't know. It could be tough. It could be tough. I am a prepper, but it's not something that I just got into in 1991. I've been a prepper all my life. I was a Boy Scout, and then my life in the military was all about preparation. And my life as a farmer is all about preparation. I'm preparing for the winter. I'm preparing for the next summer. I'm preparing to fix some equipment. I'm always preparing. And so a lot of the preparation is right here. Like, do I want to invest in some really high-tech corn growing equipment? Right now, no, because corn requires a really long season, and it's questionable whether we're even going to get a corn harvest this year. I don't think anybody knows because it went in so late and there was so little of it. We had a guest over to our house last weekend, farm family, and the wife said, "You know what? I have never seen farmers cutting as much hay as they are this year." There's always areas on people's farm where they just like, nah, I don't. We grow corn, so we have a huge silage pile, but they're cutting every blade of grass they can and turning it into hay because the farmers at the local level are anticipating problems for them, to maintain their herd or whatever they do. So, I've thought about this. I've thought about this a lot. I've known about grand solar minimums for several years now. We've been watching it get cooler and cooler and cooler. And we have friends that won't hang out with you anymore if you say that you question global warming. They will really get mad at you. Um, but that's changed. Now they're not saying global warming. They're saying climate change. And global warming was due to what man was doing. And then climate change, that's due to what man is doing too. But I don't think it is. I've had the privilege of being able to look out of a pretty nice window of a C-141 at 40,000 feet. And I can tell you that the majority of this country, there's nobody. So these little pockets of population in this country, it, they say it's changing the weather. I just really have a hard time with that. And they'll say, oh, the science is settled. Not with me, it isn't. And there's plenty of scientists that are saying, I don't think so. I don't think so. We're still in an ice age because the polar ice caps are getting thicker now. So, but the reality of what you're asking about, JD, is it a problem? Okay, you decide if we didn't get 50% of the crops in nationwide, that means we're going to have 50% of what we usually have, 50% less of what we usually have going into the next season, the next feeding season, the next winter, actually. And that what we produce is used for animal feeds and everything else. If you like Mountain Dew, there's high fructose corn syrup in there. So you're gonna, what you need to do, JD, is you need to get with Jill, and you need to learn how to make weed juice and like it.
Monday night. I'll
Mo-
put in the community comments area on our channel. I'll put a link to register for that talk.
That talk, you got to register for it.
Yep.
Okay.
But it's free.
There you go. Learn how to, learn how to survive on less now. Don't wait until there is less to learn how to survive on less, and learn how to utilize what's in your environment too. And that's really what homesteading, to me, is about. We've got an opportunity right now to go someplace where industry has left, and a population of people that's pretty secluded has been kind of left. They're kind of left there to fend for themselves. And where does wealth come from? It comes from the earth. Um, if we have a bank, all we're really doing is pushing wealth around. You know, we're not really creating wealth. Or if we have a Walmart, we're just turning raw materials that come from the earth into products, selling them. But those raw materials have to come from the earth. So if what you're hinting about right now is reality, I think it is. At least it's a concern. You got to understand, where does wealth come from? The shop and save? Only for a certain amount of time. I mean, it's not going to keep coming out of there. That's not where food comes from. You have to learn how to produce calories to sustain your own hide. You have to learn how to do that. Nobody can do that for you. You can save up. I've heard guys talking about beans, Band-Aids, and bullets, right? You're going to save all of that stuff up. That's not what's going to work. And if you've ever been to a war-torn country, bullets are a dime a dozen. But beans, food is what's a problem, and potable water that you can drink. So I would think that I would kind of go that direction if that's what you're getting at. We're able to produce our own food, so we're a couple steps ahead. And now that we're learning that there's a lot of food in our environment that we didn't plant that just comes up, that puts us a little further ahead. Learn how to forage, learn what nuts you can eat. I mean, you can make bread out of acorns. You just have to know how to do it. I mean, you look at at an acorn, and there's a lot of calories in that. More than corn, I think there's 4 times the calories in an acorn than there is the same weight of corn. And you can process it so it's not bitter, and you can use the water that you take from the processing of those acorn meats, and then you can tan a deer hide with it or a cow hide or whatever. Um, we we go around in the fall and we collect up tons of acorns and we give them to our pigs. And all those calories are stored in those pigs for our consumption later when we get ready, when we need them. So I can't eat acorns without a little bit of preparation, but they can. So you think about it that way. If you have to store up a bunch of calories for, you know, 6 months from now, what better way to store it than walking around eating grass? That's a great way to store calories. And then when you need it, you have to have the skill set necessary to process a beef or process a pig or process a chicken or a Great Pyrenees for that matter. People really complain about butchers when they bring, we don't do beef anymore because people would bring a huge animal to us and they'd walk out with 4 boxes that are about the size of a case of beer of this huge animal. And they'd be like, "Is this all of my beef?" And we'd say, "Yeah." And then the word would get back to us that they thought we took some of their beef. So that's why we quit doing beef. I just didn't want to deal with that. And we could give them the hoofs and the head and all that stuff, but we didn't do that. But if times are tough and you've got a really nice steer that you're going to take into a processor, you think you're going to get your whole beef back? I don't know. I think you really need to know how to do that yourself. And it's not that difficult. It really isn't. We can talk prepping all day long. That's one of my favorite things to talk about. There's very intricate ways to do it that are what this is about is if there's a problem, there's a food shortage or monetary breakdown or something like that, you have to survive longer than the next fattest camper. All right. Remember the old thing? You don't have to outrun the bear. You just have to outrun the next fattest camper, right? So you don't have to outrun the bear here. In this, you don't. You don't have to outrun the bear. But if times get tough and you're walking 10 miles because there's no fuel for your vehicle and you're standing in line to get whatever they give you when you come to the front of the line, might be toilet paper instead of food, then you can't be doing the things that you need to be doing to take care of your family and you might come home and your family's gone because the guy down the road had a can of sardines that he could share with them or something. So it's pretty serious stuff. I mean, and we face a lot of challenges, I think, as a population. Things look good in some respects, but then they look bad in other respects. And if we are torn by war at some point, food is it, man. Food is where it's at. Keeping yourself fed, clothed, and sleeping under a roof and having clean water to drink. And all the bullets in the world's not going to do you any good if you can't find food, right? So that was quite a rant. Is there any more questions?
Oh, yeah, Dave from Arizona wondered about your hemp, if you got it planted and how it's doing.
Yeah, I did get it planted. I planted it in the greenhouse and it didn't germinate. And then I planted it in one of my growing areas. It came up, for sure, but it only got about that big and then it turned yellow. So I don't know. I got to look into it. And it turned yellow, and it wasn't doing well, and I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. So I turned the cows in on that, and I wanted them to take everything off it because I'm going to plow it down again, and I want to try it again. I think I still have enough time to go to get some hemp in. Maybe the seed I had wasn't good. I'm going to look into getting some more. If I don't do it this year, I'm going to do it next year. I got a lot on my plate for this year, so I could see where it might slip through the cracks. But yeah, that's as far as I got. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it.
And it's 9:20.
And it's 9:20. All right. All right. Well, this is great. Mark Bakersfield. Wow, 1,200 people listening. Or is that 12,000? It's been great. We'll see you again next week. And remember, anyone can farm.